and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today is the goal setting podcast. I want to get this podcast across in a way that helps you guys and sets you up for success long term and provides you tools to ensure that you stay on a path to success versus ending up in the same place year after year. And I want to do it in a way that explains why goal setting, the way that we've been taught, is wrong, and why so much of what's out there still leaves us struggling to make progress in a way that feels good, in a way that doesn't have us self-sabotaging all the time, because life starts picking up with its busyness. Because goals, they are great when we set them, but as soon as we start to get on the road to achieve them, it's a completely different story. Think about the last year's goals or the things that you've tried to accomplish and wondered why it's so hard for you when others might make it seem easy. What I thought would be a very straightforward process was not, and it ended up taking way longer than I expected. So what exactly is a SMART goal? It's supposed to be specific, measurable, and time-bound. But I wanted to finish this podcast last week. That didn't happen. Does that mean I give up? Of course not. But that's what many people do. They get frustrated, they quit, and they jump to the next plan when things are a little challenging or not going to plan, taking too long, or not going to their expectations, wondering why nothing is working. This episode is for anyone who struggled with goal setting in health, fitness, or just life in general, and you want a better way. Have you ever set a big goal only to find yourself frustrated and overwhelmed a few weeks later, maybe feeling stuck? Maybe you've even thought, what's wrong with me? Why can't I follow through? Why can't I make this go as easy as it intended to be? The SMART goal framework holds many of us back because we have busy lives we sometimes don't anticipate, because life gets messy. And in a messy life, we need systems that can adapt to each situation and circumstance. SMART goals look amazing on paper. They're logical, measurable, they're time-bound. The very problem, because what are we basing that off? Is it really realistic? Is our idea of what progress looks like reality? Do we know what it actually takes? Or are we basing that off what we've seen online or what our friends have told us, people that go on 12-week challenges? It's like, what makes them think that that is the realistic way? They think that low carbs is the realistic way of progress, and that's the way that it should look like. You're meant to be eating in a certain way to get to a certain place that you want to be. Many of us don't think past the first checkpoint that we need to do, or the first plan that we need to do. And that's when things get even messier. We start to base future goals, future happenings on what happened before. And I'm going to bring up an example in a second, but I just want to lay out why SMART goals are dumb goals. I'm going to set you up with a framework to build habits and systems based on you, your life, and when life gets messy, how to then adapt to that. The map is not the territory. We often set goals in moments of high motivation or during a time when life feels manageable. And many times this is in January when we're on holidays. We have a lot more time to think about things. If you lost control over the holidays, then you'll be basing it off extreme motivation to get out of the shitty point that you feel yourself in. And it's lit up with all the best intentions. And as soon as you get on the road in February, in March, when work picks up, when you get thrown with a massive assignment, you get sick when the kids need you more one day, whatever it is, suddenly that achievable goal that ticked all the boxes of SMART now feels impossible. Do you give up, or do you get your toolbox and figure out which tool it is you need to use, fix the system, and then let it keep churning again? SMART goals don't leave time for this. They don't leave time for reality. They don't leave time for human. A map is not the territory. It is a simplified representation of a complicated reality. Let me break that down. Goals are like maps. They provide the direction, but they oversimplify the journey. It shows you where you want to go that way. But then when you get on the road, there might be detours, roadblocks, unpredictable twists. Or like when we went to Queensland years ago, there was about 5 years in between the time that we went prior to that. We were using an outdated GPS. It was a GPS from years ago that was not updated to the current Google Maps, to the current situation of the roads taking people from New South Wales up to Queensland. There were new highways that allowed people to travel between states much faster. We didn't have our map updated. We kept going around in circles until we switched to my phone, Google Maps, which obviously updates itself as it goes. And the same applies to your goals. You need updated systems to navigate real world challenges. You can't use old maps. You can't use old diets. What worked before isn't going to work now. And if what worked before actually worked, then you wouldn't be struggling now. This time you want it to last. You don't want to rebound as you did before, but you're using the old rules to get you to a new place. You're using old systems to get you to a new outcome. On paper, fat loss is simple, calorie deficit. But in real life, it's not that straightforward. Eat less, move more. Okay, well, if this has been something that you've been trying for ages, something is not adding up. There is nothing more complicated to fat loss than that. So what's getting in the way? Is it that work keeps getting in the way and then you fall off track, or the weekends are a mess and you haven't yet learned how to deal with the weekends, or you don't know how to deal with emotional eating or unexpected challenges? Fat loss isn't just about the calories then. It's about how you manage the stress, your cravings, your relationship with food, and your energy levels. We can bring in training to this, which makes it even more complicated. Still simple on paper. In reality, there are a lot of moving variables that we need to take into consideration. Now, back to the map being outdated. This is where it gets even trickier. And this is where coaching comes in. We need to reconcile with what we want to be true with what is actually true. What is the fact? What are we missing? Where are our blind spots? Only we question everything except that which we know wholeheartedly to be true. But is it? We are human and we are wired with so many biases, fears, and past experiences that are playing on our mind. What if this happens? I don't want to end up worse. But then there's a confirmation bias where we find proof, we've gathered evidence to always confirm things that we know to be true. We always look for things that somehow make sense to us because we don't like things conflicting with our idea of reality. But if what we've been taught isn't the actual reality, we've just been reinforcing the wrong. They've shaped how we experience reality, the way that we go about our lives and make our choices. This is where coaches help you to identify your blind spots. They show you things that you wouldn't have looked into before, which is why I have always had a coach. Even as a coach myself, they bring a different perspective that is more based off an objective reality that isn't subject to emotions, to stress, to the things going on around us. And it removes the constant double thinking, the second guessing, and it keeps us moving forward. It helps us. They're like their helicopter view that says, okay, well, I can see the roadblocks here. That is one problem with SMART goals. The other problem is unrealistic expectations. Where that client story, she did keto in the past and she lost a whole lot of weight really fast. She gained the weight back, uncontrollable binges, a terrible relationship with food, a lot of food fears, anxieties. She wanted to lose weight again and she was struggling. She knew that her mindset still wasn't right. And then she came to me, and this is where SMART goals set her up to fail. Her idea of realistic and time bound was based off her idea of progress, which was she had to see progress fast. And when she wasn't seeing progress fast enough, it's, what am I doing wrong? Something isn't working. Is this normal? Maybe I should go harder. She was getting up in her own head because progress wasn't happening as fast as it did when she was on keto. But it was actually happening at a pace that was sustainable, and it was happening for her. If you're going to keep sabotaging yourself, you're not going to see the progress that you want. If you're basing what your ruler of progress looks like on outdated metrics. That's the old map on new territory. Let's look at two different people. One is a working mum with 3 kids, a chaotic schedule, and demanding work hours. The other works from home. She owns her own business, has a lot more flexibility in her day. They both have goals, but their needs are completely different. The principles will remain the same, but they need different plans to account for it. For example, the busy mum needs a plan that accounts for the constant pivots. Quick, simple food options that take less than 10 minutes is an example for this. Or maybe something she can meal prep in bulk for the week. She might need more plan Bs, like knowing she can grab a Subway sandwich or something nearby. The business owner has more time to prepare meals and can stick to a plan without as many distractions. While the principles are the same, like the calorie deficit they would both need for fat loss and progressive overload to keep the muscle, the way that they're applied is completely different. The terrain of their lives demands different strategies. And this is why having an action plan in itself is still not enough. It's about having tools and a flexible system that works for you and not just applied to one context, because life is never going to be the same. Now let's take running a marathon for an example. You wouldn't just wake up one day and start running the whole 40 kilometers and go out the door and voila, you ran your first marathon. You need to get started first, and then you need to break it down into smaller actionable steps. And when you're finding you're not showing up to the sessions or the nutrition isn't the way it should be, then we need to start tackling what's stopping you from showing up to those things. Everyone has their own setbacks and things that get in the way. So yes, we need the action steps, but then we need to figure out what's stopping those action steps from happening and why aren't we getting to that outcome. Instead of obsessing over the scale or the weight you want to lose, you need to focus on the habits that get the result that you want. And if that hasn't been working for you, what has been getting in the way? What have been your setbacks? For the working mum, it might mean prioritizing meal prep and grabbing frozen veggies to save time because she was resorting to Uber Eats all the time because she didn't have any other quick options. The meal plan she downloaded wasn't working for her. Both are moving forward to the same outcome, but the tools and paths they use will be different. And then if we want to use deadlifting as an example, which is a great example, you want to deadlift twice your body weight. You're not going to just keep deadlifting heavier and heavier. And you're not going to just deadlift to get the deadlift goal. Just like you're not going to just focus on the scale going down if weight loss and like if you have a lot of fat to lose, just fat loss, focusing on that until the end goal, trying to watch the scale go down and wanting to see it go down in a linear rate, in a fast way and continually, expecting everything to go smoothly just by focusing on that is not going to work. In deadlifting, you can't just deadlift and get where you want to be. And you also can't keep testing your strength. The more you test your strength, the weaker you get, as counterintuitive as it sounds. But try and just sit with that and relate that to fat loss. You need to identify your weak points, not just training consistently and recovering well and fueling properly, but you need to figure out what's stopping your deadlift from getting to the 2 times per body weight deadlift. It could be your glutes, it could be your core, it could be your slow off the floor. Then with fat loss, it might be emotional eating, weekend binges, whatever your stumbling blocks are, they are the areas you need to address. Just focusing on fat loss isn't going to get you there, because every single time you start a deficit, you'll fall off track every single time and you'll fall through the cracks because the foundation isn't there. You haven't built it up. You need to start with the support structures. This is why SMART goals fail. There is no way to predict how long that foundation is going to take to build. And it's not about rushing it or pushing it harder. You can't force a foundation to be built faster. If you are trying to build your life dream of a house, would you rush them to build the foundations and risk it being a dodgy job? and then you live in it for a couple of years. Now it's starting to crack and fall through, and you can't set yourself a timeline. You can't predict those things. This is the biggest mistake people make. They expect results on a timeline that doesn't match reality, and everyone's reality is different. You can't just chase intensity, more steps, and stricter dieting or harder workouts if you haven't mastered the consistency yet. Then layer on more complexity, because once you've nailed those, you can start to see progress in all of that. You build the confidence and things start to change. You start to feel better. Your foundation is solid. And then everything you layer on top only progresses you further and gives you more excitement, more enthusiasm to keep improving. It's not going to be a constant rehash, starting over cycle. Now you have a more complex map to take you to the destination that you want to go. You have a lot more details on the map. You have a lot more vibrance. But that map that we just created for you, that's not going to work for Jane. That's going to work for you only, because it's in the context of your life. Then we want to think of what exactly do we want to start. You can't start all the habits all at once. What's the one thing that can make the other things easier, or the one thing that will make the biggest difference? It might be drinking water. The water might make you feel more alert. It might make you want to walk more. Figure out your mountain habit, the thing that makes everything else a little bit easier, or that can easily have it stack with something else, and let the dominoes fall. Experiment. Try different things. See what works. Be flexible with it. Another thing that SMART goals don't give space or time for is this experimenting. If you're in a rush and there's this time pressure, the unnecessary pressure on perfectionism leaves little room for flexibility, and it leaves little room for you to feel confident in what you're doing. Because if you can't feel confident that you can stay consistent in something, that you can stay on track with something, you're going to keep falling into the same pattern of a repetitive cycle. Now that we got the actions, you figured out your mountain habit, we know what leads to the end outcome. It's now doing it consistently. And the only way to do it consistently is to know what enemies we're going to come up against on the battlefield. This is where those systems come in. If then plans are one of my favorites. If X happens, I will do Y. If I can't stick to my planned meals because I got caught up for lunch, then I will XYZ. I will go to Subway and I will order a 6-inch with grilled chicken, no cheese. I will throw on all of the veggies. I'll ask for double protein if I need to get extra protein in that meal. That is an if-then plan. That is a plan B. If I can't do my full workout, then I will put my phone on 30 minutes and get 30 minutes done. If I have a stressful day and I can't put my head to having the perfect meal plan, then I am just going to think about making sure that I have protein and veggies at each meal, and I'm going to be okay with that. Which brings me to the other strategy, which is scaling your habits. There's your ideal habit, there's your good enough habit, and then there's your non-negotiable. So let's start with good enough. What is a good enough target for you that you'll be happy with? That good enough can be, I'll be happy if I just get 10,000 steps. I ideally want to get 12,000 steps. That's the best case scenario because that's what I want to achieve. But if I get 10,000, that's good enough and I'm happy with that. But a non-negotiable that I will not go below, it is a no-go red zone, is 7,000 steps. I will not get below 7,000 steps. For some people, the minimum effective dose might be 8,000. You might think 8,000 is your good enough. The goal isn't to keep improving the ideal and keep raising the roof for everything that you want to achieve because you're such a high achiever. That is where everyone lets themselves down. We want to keep achieving and improving shit. And when we're not, we fall all the way back down again. It's like this boom and bust. No. Let's work on improving the floor. Make the worst habits better so that when we fall lower. Let's get better at handling these situations when we fall off, or make the comeback a shorter time frame. So if we go back to our actions, we got that. We got our tools for when shit's crazy. It seems all good in practice, but how can we make it easier for ourselves? It is much easier to go down the well-trodden path. I don't feel like walking today. I'm just going to sit on the couch. Well, see, I thought about it, but I just didn't. It's so easy to do that. So how can we make things easier for ourselves? We can make sure that when we sit at our desk, we might put our walking shoes on so that it's like on our feet and it makes it easier, which is what I have to do, especially in winter. It's like the last thing I want to do is walk, even though I'm someone that gets in, I can easily get in plenty steps if I get myself to walk. But the alternative is I can't be bothered to get up. So that helps a lot. Automate your decisions. Have go-to meals. We usually eat the same things on repeat, the same similar meals on repeat. So have those set there. Have a set workout schedule where you know when you're going to show up to the gym. Put it into your Google Calendar. Have it as a recurring calendar reminder that you know that you're showing up at those times. If you're someone that doesn't have a regular schedule, then plan it ahead of time for the week. Know what your week looks like. And if you're not 100% sure, then have 2 gym blocks in. If I don't go here, plan B will be here. It depends. Again, someone else's map will not work for you. Your maps are different. You're in different locations, different territories. The next one is to remove the barriers, make it easier. Get the chocolate off the counter. That's more environmental design, but make the habits that you want to build obvious and make it easier to do the ones that you want to do. So gym bag by the door. So then you just grab the gym bag and go. Your lunch, prep it the night before and then you just go. Grab and go. Another one can be overnight oats. You have overnight oats for breakfast. So then you don't have to worry about having to think about, do I want a healthy breakfast or do I want to grab a croissant? All different things that can lead to you doing the favorable habit. And then, like I mentioned before, removing barriers, remove distractions. Husband's crisps, tell him to hide it, to put it on the upper shelf. Tell him that you don't want to see it in your face because it's staring at you. Make things easier for yourself. Willpower does not work. Another one is like having a meal planning ritual. One of my favorites for this is you figure out what you want to eat for the whole week on a Friday, as an example, because to me, meal planning is a non-negotiable. It's different from meal prepping, but knowing what you're going to eat for the week ahead, what do you want to eat for dinners? Maybe you alternate between chicken and red meat on the dinners. Maybe you alternate between Mexican and a normal roast. Think of something like that. Or it might be, okay, we're going to have a burrito bowl this today, chicken cacciatore, chicken soup. Know what you're going to eat for the week. Write down all the ingredients you need for your shopping list, shop, and then when you come home, before you put things into the freezer, chop up your veggies, make it really easy to access. Mostly stock up on frozen. Buy some tinned, easy-to-go proteins, like tinned chicken. Then you can put chicken before you put it into the fridge or whatever protein meats you have. Weigh it out, bag it up in 150 grams in the freezer. Then all you need to do is defrost it, throw it into the air fryer, and you can add that to whatever you want for a really quick lunch. First principles, which is the habits that we know that we need. The second principles, which is what happens after that if something else happens, like the if-then strategies and scaling your habits. And then the third principles is just thinking 3 steps ahead and building systems for when things go wrong, when we need a plan B. Eliminating decision fatigue. Progress is a huge failing point of SMART goals. They do not account for how progress works. We set out with the idea that our timeline is going to look a certain way, or our perception of what progress looks like. Or we might even know and expect that progress happens a certain way, but once we're caught up in the dopamine of, I want my lifts to always be going up all the time, that is when we start to feel like, what's the point? Where's the motivation? I'm not progressing. Why am I not progressing? Why am I going backwards? What's wrong with me? This is shit. So what happens past that first checkpoint when you're in the thick of it, when progress isn't happening at the rate that you like, because it's not going to. You can't expect to lose X every week or every month because it doesn't work that way. And progress kind of works in an inverted U. Like it starts off really freaking slow while you're building the habits. Or if you have to set out a foundation and build the foundation, it starts off really freaking slow. then as you gain momentum and as you get into the system of it all and build the confidence in your ability to do things, that's when it speeds up. And then the longer you've been doing it, the more invisible progress is. It's just like nothing's happening. For many people, there will be invisible progress for months and months and months at the start of a program too, because there are so many things that need to be worked on before you actually see the progress physically. And if you try to rush that, that's why you've always been struggling in the past. So it's trying to figure out what progress looks like for you. For me, it looks like nothing. Because I've been doing this for so long. It's like the logbook will go up for a few weeks in a row, and then all of a sudden there's nothing, or it goes backwards, or I'm struggling. And it's not going up in every single lift either. That, like, if your program is going up in progress on nearly all of your lifts every single week, something is up. You're not actually progressing. You should not be bumping up your lifts every single week, because that's not the reality of progress. As you progress in something, progress slows a lot. That is called leveling up. Well done, you advanced. It's now game time where you have to work really hard to see tangible progress. But that's the thing, it's called invisible progress, because you're still making changes. Like for me, I show up to most of my upper body movements. Everything's the same. Sometimes more reps, but then I'll lose the reps, then I get more reps. It's very staggered. And if you put all of your worth based on what the numbers say, whether it's on a scale or on a logbook, you're not going to get anywhere. It takes longer to see the numbers go up, but when it does, it's so much more rewarding. And this is where we have to think of other parts of progress within that same context. Like, okay, when I'm doing my delts, I'm going to focus on the pump. I'm going to focus on the burn in my delts, because the delts are a small muscle. That's something where you can chase the pump and chase the burn. If it's something like your squats or your deadlifts, it's, I want to focus on improving my form in this as well. I want to make them look better. I want to make them feel easier. You might steal an extra rep. I want to see if I can get an extra rep. You still want to chase any increase that you can. It's just that it's not going to be as fast to come by as it was before. You can also buy little micro plates, like the 0.5, the 0.25 kilos. So that will be like 0.5 pound plates. And you can add them onto things as well. I do that on my deadlifts and squats just because I find it fun. And on the leg press, you can put on one of those 2.5 pound or 1.25 kilo plates just on one side, and that's still progress. Next, it's about anti-fragility. None of that matters if you are not anti-fragile. Anti-fragile isn't about never breaking. It is about coming back stronger after setbacks. Think of your muscles. When you train, they break down and you rebuild stronger. Like you're building a stronger muscle because it's breaking down. The most anti-fragile you can become is only from getting broken so many times that you keep rebuilding stronger. Think of the scabs, for example. They have to layer back as well. If you only act when there's a smooth road, you'll fail, because once life happens, you haven't built back anti-fragile. You want to trial and fail as much as you can up front. Gather all that data, because it's not about your goals. It's about, actually, it's not even about the actions. It's about how you do you, how you come back from anything that sets you back. And it's your ability to still stay enthusiastic through it, to still stay motivated. After every setback, you need to reflect on what went wrong, what you can learn from it, and what you can do next time to prevent it. And if there was even anything you would want to change about it, because sometimes we think we should change something for the sake of it, but we realize that we keep forcing something that isn't really a priority right now. There are other higher priorities, which is why we keep struggling with it. And the fact that we keep focusing on it just makes us harder on ourselves, and it makes us more demoralized. So figure out, what is it that you need to do to make you feel good? Like, what is the thing that you want to change? And then work backwards from there. This is where I like using the OODA and the WHOOP frameworks. OODA, OODA, is just like, okay, observe with reverse storytelling. What is it that led to this outcome? Why did I end up stuck here? Branch it all out. What could have contributed to it? Think of anything back to first principles. Like, what do you know to be true that leads to X, Y, Z? and then break it back from there. Okay, so if it was the fact that you raided the pantry at dinner and that was one of them, okay, what could have led to that? Well, I skipped breakfast. I didn't go for my morning walk. You can repeat the same words and sentences and all the different elements of this brainstorm. We're just trying to figure out what it is that led to where you are now so that it doesn't repeat itself. And then the whoop factors in with this. So what exactly is it that you want? And if you can't decide which one of those habits you want to experiment with first, what is it that you want to achieve? What's your wish? And what's the outcome that you want to achieve with that? How do you want to feel? What is it going to bring for you? Why do you want to address that wish? That will help you decide which of these actions you want to address first. So we got the O. What obstacles are going to come in the way? You've done this before. You've struggled in the past. What obstacles usually come up? And then we want to plan for them using the structures I told you above. The if-then, the scaling of habits, the decision fatigue that we're going to try to mitigate so that we can make things easier for ourselves. The third systems, use the first, second, and third systems principles for this O and the P, the obstacle planning and the planning in itself. And then that's when you use the A of the OODA and you act. The only thing to remember now is that with these tools, we can keep moving forward and not fall into all or nothing thinking. You can go through a whole list of cognitive distortions and try to get to know them really intimately if you Google it and see where they pop up in your life, because we want to try to get rid of that. Get rid of the false beliefs of what progress looks like and stop expecting to see big leaps of progress and just focus on where you are now, because it's the work in practice that makes the stand. You don't get stronger by testing your strength continuously. You don't get stronger by always doing 1 rep maxes. You get stronger by all of the base foundational work, the accessories, building yourself up. To sum up this podcast, and that's because the map isn't the territory. Cool, weight loss, calorie deficit, but there's a more intricate terrain, and you've been there before, and you've struggled before, and you've failed before, and you know exactly what it is you don't want to feel anymore. You know exactly what it is that you don't want. So what is it? I don't want to feel exhausted all the time. I don't want to dread my workouts. I don't want to go into my workouts feeling so depleted that I can't give my best. I don't want to regain all the weight again. I don't want to have to feel this way when I show up to a social event and worry about absolutely every single thing that I'm doing. I don't want to go on holidays and completely lose control and then come back so much heavier. Or I don't want to go on holidays and feel this sense of confliction that I don't know what to do. And then I'm either losing control or I'm holding myself back. And then I feel like I'm in this perpetual prison. What's going to lead to that? Figure out what it is you need to do and what you need to avoid to not get to where you were before. We can get in our own way by tight pants, let's pull carbs back, let's do a quick diet. I want to feel confident in bikini season and keep ourselves stuck. You don't want to keep repeating the thing where you're not feeling like you're getting lean enough because you keep staying stuck in your comfort zone because everything else scares you. So what do you need to do instead? You might need to hire a coach to stop your confirmation bias, to stop you self-sabotaging, to pull you out on your blind spots and to keep you on the path. Because sometimes there's something we know we need to do, but we avoid it for the what ifs. And I guess something you can think about here as well is my framework for there's future pacing, but there's also regret minimization. They're both kind of the same. Regret minimization is if you future paced yourself 2 years from now, or even 1 year from now, or even your 75-year-old self, what decision would they wish you have made? Because time, we feel like we don't have enough time and we need to get it all done now. But if we think about it in that context, that is a lot of time from you now to your 75-year-old self, to your 80-year-old self, maybe to your 50-year-old self if you're a little bit younger. What do you need to do now to minimize the regrets that you're going to have then? Because I'm sure your 75-year-old self is going to want to feel strong and confident and resilient and independent and not always going into the doctor's office. So maybe we need to prioritize more strength training. We need to prioritize more protein, more veggies, so that we feel good and we don't have all the regrets of our 30-year-old self, our 40-year-old self. What emotions are currently holding you back? What emotions cloud your judgment? When do you usually fall off? For many people, it's PMS week. That's when they get hard in their bodies and then they sabotage themselves. What habits held you back last year? What is one habit that we can commit to this week, that we can work on, that we can expand on and improve on and layer on? And how do you want to feel? What habits are going to get you there? This is where the future pacing comes in now. Everything I said before was a regret minimization. Future pacing is how you want to feel, what is going to take you there. And then going back to the whoop, to the OODA, what barriers, what obstacles, let's plan for it, let's act and bring all of this together again. So it kind of brought us on a full circle where if you listen to this a second time, everything won't make sense again. What is one thing that you don't want to bring into 2025 is the last question that I'm going to leave you with. Actually, what is one habit that you can commit to this week? So what is one thing that you don't want to bring into 2025? Let me know. And what is one habit that you can commit to this week? Because the path to your best self isn't a straight line. It's messy. It's imperfect. It's uniquely human, and it's humanly unique because you're not a robot. You're not a lab animal. And that's exactly why this works, because a map doesn't show the territory and it is not human. So I love you all, and I hope this helped.